We are live.
Saludos a todos, greetings everyone, and welcome to another Educator Innovator Hangout on air. Feel that air rolling by. I'm your host for this Hangout, Christina Puntel. I'm a Philadelphia Writing Project teacher, and I've been teaching in Philadelphia since 1998. I'm just starting at a new school this year, where I have a principal who's also a writing project person. It's a real treat. I'm at George Washington Carver High School for Engineering and Science. I teach a Spanish class, and I also do a lot of student support. My background is in special education. I have my certification in special education, and so I'm doing quite a bit of that this year, both in middle and high school. This Hangout connects to a larger project here at EI called Letters to the Next President 2.0. Letters to the Next President is an initiative that empowers young people, 13 to 18 years old and younger in other ways, to voice their opinions and ideas on the issues that matter to them in the coming election. Encourage you to check out that website if you have not yet, although I am sure if you're tuned in right now, because you know about this website. It's letterstopresident.org. Again, letterstopresident.org. So here at EI, we've been doing a series of webinars related to topics and issues that come up when we think about writing letters to the next president. Today, we're going to be discussing how sometimes how this sometimes contentious election season can be a time to uncover students' passions and interests and learn together how to live in community. Thank you for joining us here today, and a special thanks to our guests. I'm going to let them all introduce themselves to you. For those of you watching this Hangout live, please post thoughts, ideas, and questions via the Q&A feature embedded in the video player. Or tweet questions and follow along using the hashtag #2NextPrez, hashtag 2NextPrez. We're going to start with a reflection on the word community. So to do this, I've invited our guests, who will introduce themselves to you in a quick second, to share words, phrases, songs that come to mind when they think about the word community. And I'd like to invite you, our listeners, to do the same thing. So reflect on the word community. Keep circling back to that word in your reflection. We'll share these reflections out loud so we can grow some roots for our conversation about building community and uncovering passions during this election season. Before we share our reflections on the word community, though, I want each of our guests to tell us a little bit about please tell us who you are and where you're from. And Carla, could you start us out?
Sure, I'd be happy to. My name's Carla Troutman, and I teach in a rural high school in far Northern California. And when I say Northern California, I don't mean Sacramento, I mean right on the Oregon border. So we're very geographically isolated from the rest of the world. But that doesn't mean that our kids don't have really big opinions about what's going on in the world. So I've been teaching for 17 years, and I teach both social studies and English in small schools. People have to wear a lot of hats. So I do a little bit of social studies, a little bit of English, a little bit of computer skills, a little bit of coaching, just a little bit of everything, but it keeps my life pretty interesting. When I really think of community, it was funny when I saw the word song. The first thing I think about is our school fight song that we sing at every game, and every Friday before the weekend we meet in the quad and we sing the school fight song. And so that's what I think about when I think of community to start off with.
You're not going to sing it for us, Carla?
Well, I could, but that might cause people to tune right out.
All right. Maybe later. Maybe after
later.
A few rounds of this, Carla.
That's right.
All right. Heather, I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself and maybe share a reflection on the word community.
Okay, so my name is Heather Van Mathysen. Was a teacher in Chicago Public Schools for 12 years. Taught, if you're familiar with Chicago, we don't have an east side because that's a lake, but I've taught on the southwest and north sides of Chicago. And a while back, I left the classroom. I was working for an organization called MICVA Challenge, which is a civic learning organization. If you haven't checked them out, definitely do. I'll talk about them more later. But I've recently accepted a position with Chicago Public Schools, so now I'm the civic learning instructional specialist, and I support our civics teachers across the city. And I guess an interesting caveat is that I was an English teacher in high school. So I'm a bit of a unicorn in the civics world. I work mostly with social studies teachers, but I think it offers an opportunity for me to support them in literacy development as well as civic learning integration. So that's my career background. I guess when I think of community, I really liked this question because I think there's two ways to look at community. There's the literal sense of the kind of communities that we live in, but there's also the emotional and social connections to different kinds of communities in which we live. And we all, I think, don't spend a lot of time thinking about the ways in which our communities intersect. And so I guess the word to me the first word that comes to mind for me is consensus. I think that's a definitive quality for communities that we often don't think about, especially in our American democracy, is that communities continually learn and grow in how to build consensus and understand each other and come to a greater understanding about who we are and where we want to go.
Thanks. So Lisa, I'm going to throw it over to you, my fellow Philly friend.
So I have to say, first of all, I feel so honored to be part of this small little community, because you all sound amazing, all three of you, it's amazing. So anyway, community actually means so much to me. I think about community a lot. This is not just some word that came up, right? It's so much a part of what I do as a school teacher. So my name is Lisa Hammond. I teach grade 3 in Philadelphia. Currently, I have been teaching for the Philadelphia School District for almost 30 years, and in Philadelphia altogether for almost 40 years. And I have been building communities of young activists for 40 years. So community, I could go on for hours for what community brings up for me, but so I just jotted down a few things, which was the idea of joining together and supporting each other, being aware of being a member of a group rather than you're all by yourself, and what that means, embracing the individual and all the differences, working together towards a goal, and the importance of listening.
Thanks, Lisa. So I introduced myself already, but I also did some thinking about community, and I did think of a song, and I might sing it right now. So
go for it.
We are family. I got all my sisters and me. So that song definitely came to mind for me. And that word family does come to mind in all its imperfections and in all its humanity, actually, when I think of community. And I also did, the word church came to mind for me as well. And I've been to churches where I've worshiped that are sort of surface communities, like we get there and we like see each other, and that's the community. But then I've also been to churches where we're willing to go there with each other and go deeper with each other. So I was thinking about that surface community versus the going deeper community. Though the word utopia does come up for me when I think about community, brokenness also really does as well. And just claiming humanity. And then I guess the last thing that came to mind was really some sort of physical presence. In some ways, physical presence. But I think showing up for each other and being willing to go there. So I'm wondering, we just heard from each other, and people that are listening, I want to encourage you to share questions via Twitter. That chat feature is not working, but I'm hoping that if you're listening, you're able to share questions via Twitter, and hopefully someone on Twitter will let us know that you're there too. But for those of us that just heard each other, does anything stand out from what we just heard from each other? So if there's anything that stands out from what we just heard, it'd be great just to hear. I know, Carla, you something did stand out for you, so you might want to share that now.
Yeah, no, I really loved the word consensus that you used to describe community. And I also really thought about, it was interesting when you said that we don't often think about how our communities are interconnected or intertwined. And one of the things that I really thought about when I was considering this word community was I kind of visualized circles. And in my mind, the communities that I'm a part of could be, could move around. Sometimes the communities are intertwined and look like a Venn diagram because they share community members, while others are kind of outside of that shared part. Sometimes the circles are a subset of a bigger circle. And so there's all these really interesting ways that communities intersect and intertwine. And it's particularly, I've always lived in a really small town, so I don't really know what the urban experience is, but being part of a rural community, I graduated from the high school that I teach at. So I have a long, I've lived here my whole life, and my parents and my grandparents graduated from the same high school. So there's a lot of communities, different communities within our greater, geographic community that I belong to, and I think I love that about living in a small town, and I love that about community. So those are the two things that really stood out for me.
So so consensus also rings true for me, because we use that in my classroom to come to a lot of agreement on various things and whatnot. But just listening to the speakers, right? So West Coast rural community and Midwest and East Coast, right? It makes me think of the book People by Peter Spire. I don't know if you know it, so because I teach elementary school, right? So, but Peter Spire went all around the world, and he's an anthropologist, and he drew these amazing pictures of noses and ears, and he just found out all about the differences of people and the similarities of people. It just makes me think, there's so much we don't really know about people all over the world, right? But we are one. We're so big, right? The world is so big, but we are one community of human beings with needs and desires and hopes and dreams. And even, I can tell just from the short time, being right here, you can tell that even though we're so kind of disparate or diverse in our geographic region, we share a lot, right? We share the desire to do good in our classrooms. That's clear for all of us. I just think that's so exciting. It's nice.
Yeah, I can build off of that. I agree. I think that that what you just said, along with, I think, the collection of our different experiences and thinking about the word community, begs me to think about our classrooms as communities and how little time, I think, generally we do spend on being reflective and thinking about how that works and how we need to build these skills for our students throughout the year. I think in Chicago, we just finished our second week of classes, and that's usually around the time people stop thinking about building community in their classroom, because then they start getting into the content. And I think that it really is important for us to reflect on how important it is that we not only feel connected to different people in different communities or different areas, but all of the wealth of skills that we've just identified that we need to consistently develop and grow. And it doesn't just happen in the beginning of the year, right? It happens all year. And I know it can be one more thing that we have to think about, that we have to teach, but at the same time, it's important nonetheless.
Unmuted.
I think it's the most important thing we teach.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love that you said that after the first 2 weeks is sometimes when we forget to keep going with it. And I think sometimes that we don't look at content as community building. You know, we see it as something separate from an intellectual endeavor that actually is meant to create a community of learners, or that we are most called in that moment to create a community of learners around the content. So I think that brings us right into this next part of the conversation, which is kind of, now that we have a sense of the depth of what community means to us, I want to give you all a chance to share something from your teaching practice. How do you uncover students' passions and interests in your work? What's the connection between student interests and civic engagement, between community and civic engagement? So I'm just going to ask for, whoever kind of wants to get us started with this conversation to share. And again, listeners, I also encourage you to help us think about this, and to as ideas come up, or as we share here, if it resonates with you, again, to let us know on Twitter via that hashtag #2nextprez. So Carla, Lisa, Heather, would anybody like to go first here?
Sure, I'm happy to go first.
Thanks, Carla.
The idea of building community in class is essential, I think, and I do think that you can intertwine it with the content, and a couple of things that you guys touched on a minute ago. This whole idea of time. Sometimes we rush so fast to get the content covered that we forget to give kids time. I like to build in exploration time, time for them to explore, because for my high school students, 11th and 12th graders, there's a lot they know because they're high schoolers, but there's also a lot that they really don't know, and they wonder about. So I use Flipboard in my classroom as a means to explore different ideas, and it's really been an interesting activity because it's not very structured, but I really think kids are reading more and talking more in that exploration time than when I give them an assignment, because it's based on what they're interested in. And I'm paying particular attention during those times, listening to what it is they're interested in, so then I can build on that and try to build content based on what their interests are. So I think the time to explore in a safe place where they can do that freely and be accepted for what they're interested in, I think is really, really important.
Carla, for those of us who don't know what Flipboard is, can you describe it a little bit? And then also Heather and Lisa, if you have any questions, this would be a great time to ask them as well. Sure.
Flipboard is an app that you can download. It doesn't cost anything, but it allows you to, it essentially creates a personalized magazine for you based on your interests. And there are like 1,500 different categories that you can choose from, and then it sifts through all of the articles and newspapers and magazines about that particular topic, or about the categories that you've expressed interest in, and it puts them right there at your fingertips so that you can explore some more. So through Flipboard, I learn what kids are interested in, if they're interested in music, or the environment, or fishing, or sports, or whatever it is, they have 1,500 different categories they can choose from, and then they have all this reading material that's based on their interests. So it's a really great tool, and kids tell me, Ms. Troopman, I've never sat and read for 2 hours in my whole life, and I just love this Flipboard. So kids really like it too. So I think it's a really good app to introduce them to.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah, it's really fun.
Carla, do you have them build the Flipboard in class? And
yes.
and then do you have like a ritual or a routine? Like, do you do it, like, do they read once a week? Do you have like a Flipboard day? Like, how do you work?
Yeah, I do have a Flipboard day. It usually is Fridays. And I chose Fridays because a lot of our students are really involved in athletics, and we have to travel at least 3 hours to go to compete. So a lot of kids miss a lot of schools on Fridays to go to games, but Flipboard's something that they can do on the bus as they're traveling down there. And so usually Fridays, it's an independent activity that they can do in class, but they can also do, when they're traveling. But it does give those kids that don't have access to high-speed internet at home the opportunity to participate as well. So it works out well for us to do it on a Friday afternoon. And then kids can talk to each other about it as well. And it's really cool because they're like, look at this article. I mean, they really are sharing what it is that they're reading, which is, I think, really amazing.
That's awesome. Heather and Lisa, do you have any other questions for Carla at this moment, or does one of you want to jump in?
Go ahead, Heather.
No, go ahead.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, I remember seeing that app and wanting to play around with it, but I never did, and I wish I did. So maybe I'll try and put something together for my teachers, because I'm making notes of it right now. But it reminded me of, this isn't the resource I wanted to share, but it just reminded me of Storify, which have any of you guys used that? It collects a bunch of different tweets and Instagram posts from a certain hashtag and creates a story based on the interactions that students use in social media. I've been thinking about it lately because I want to set up some Twitter chats for the debate watch parties. But, well, I guess I could talk about what I wanted to share. I had a tough time thinking about this because admittedly, it was one of my favorite things to do as a teacher, was activities like this and helping students to develop their own voice and empower their voices in my content and my instruction in my school. But I think the one I wanted to share is something I thought would be great for everyone to use. It was hands down one of the most powerful things I've ever done in the classroom is participate in a program that Mikva Challenge organizes called Project Soapbox. And I don't think it's necessarily a revolutionary idea. It's students giving speeches, 2-minute speeches on issues that they care about. And there's a curriculum and there's a whole program for it. And there's a national competition this year, which is going to be I think it's on the NWP Letters to Press site. But the reason why it was so powerful for me is that of all my get to know you activities and icebreakers and all the things I've ever done with students, I learned more about my kids doing that than anything. And it really, I think, put front and center what I valued the most, which was them and their ideas and their issues and their thoughts, and not just their perspective about what's affecting them in their school or community or their family or with their friends, but what are their ideas for solutions, right? What is their perspective? We're preparing students to engage in a democracy in some of the most undemocratic systems, a school, right, or a classroom, and how to have students engage in engage civically, oftentimes we think about, well, they write letters to the mayor or, activities like that, but challenging ourselves to think about how to authentically have students participate in their community, in their school, in their own lives really has to begin with better understanding what they think and feel about where they live. And so I forget, is this the time to share stories about, did you want us to share a story too? Okay, I have an example. So a couple examples, but one really simple one. I have this student who, one of the biggest issues always every year with my students is issues of self-harm or cutting or depression. They always speak about these issues, and it's either something they've experienced or their friends have experienced. And so this particular student, in her speech and as developing her speech, she identified a problem that students didn't have access to counselors in the building because they couldn't leave the lunchroom to go to visit their counselor. And I remember hearing that in the speech and like, wait, what? You can't, when do you go to your counselor? You can't go during lunch. There's no other time in our school day unless it's after school, and can't have every single kid going, or we only had one counselor for the whole building. And so she the principal heard that speech, and the rest of the teachers heard that speech and made some policy changes to passes so students can access their counselors during lunch. And I think that's a really small example of the impact that can happen when we create a space for our young people to speak out on issues that affect them, particularly in our school, right? We often develop policy, debate policy, even selecting bell schedules, and we don't include our students in thinking about how they can contribute to this. And so we lose a lot of teachable moments because of that. And so I have a lot more stories that are more emotional or deeper, but I think that is just a quick example of how much we can learn about how we can better serve our students when we learn more about their experiences. So definitely Project Soapbox. Do it.
That's awesome.
So I go right off of that. Mm-hmm. Is that okay?
Yeah, go, Lisa.
So mine isn't as quite as intense and deep, Heather, because I work with 9-year-olds, and their biggest concern are whether the puppies have homes. But in my classroom, we work all year to build community with each other, be a community together that wants to make change, and then make change in our larger community. So we work really hard to learn how to listen to each other in the beginning of the year and how to talk and share what it is we're interested in and or concerned about. And my children do come to consensus. We work towards a debate, and they have a debate in December. They come to consensus on a topic that they're interested in studying, that we'll then delve in and become experts on. And we then invite guest speakers in. We do research on the internet. We have books. We go on trips, and we learn everything we can about that topic. And then towards May and June, my children decide, usually it happens organically through guest speakers or a book we're reading. My children decide, and they're 8 and 9, they decide what project they will do connected to the issue that they were studying in some way of helping. So, for instance, last year, my students studied the origins of meanness. They wanted to know all there was to know about meanness. Where did it come from? Why are people mean? And so we did. We studied all year. We had psychoanalysts come in. We had social workers come in. We did a number of activities that helped us really understand meanness. And then at the end of the year, my students did two projects. They had listening sessions around the school because they heard that listening was so important. And so they would just listen to people around the school. And we also had a giveaway day. We thought spreading happiness would reduce meanness. So they made all sorts of things, and they just gave it away at their recess time and spread the happiness throughout the school. And that actually has carried on to this year because children are now having listening sessions on Tuesday at our school. So it makes a bigger dent than just the June period. And I've done these projects with the kids for 10 years now. So my kids have done all sorts of things. Like we raised a cat in our classroom and found a home for it to be adopted. My children developed a museum, an anti-smoking museum, and it ran for 3 days, and we had about 1,200 visitors, wow. Some of whom stopped smoking after coming to that museum. I think my dad stopped smoking after coming to that museum. So not only do they make an impact on other people during that time period, they've become impacted. They take that with them through the world, and they believe that they can make an impact. So hopefully they're taking that with them in all of their communities that they'll be in their future.
Wow, I want to come to your classroom. I want to redo third grade and go to yours.
Come on down. That'd be fun. I want to come to your classroom.
That sounds amazing.
It's a lot of fun. It's very intense. We obviously also do all the mandate stuff. All the stuff you're supposed to do, but we do it within all of that parameter of what did you choose? What do you really want to know about? How are we going to find out about it? And what are we going to do about it?
Thanks, Lisa. I'll share a little now, and then maybe we can do what we did before, where we try to say what stands out from each other's stories and sharing. So I'm going to share from this year. This is, I think, day 9 of school in Philly. And I'm new to the school, and I have a study skills class at the very end of the day, 11th grade study skills class at the end of the day, every day. So these are students who've been identified that need extra support. So we started by doing some of the 2 Next Pres What's My Issue work. We use the KQED issues from the campaign that are kind of salient right now. But then I had students just brainstorm what's my issue. But then we did it sort of in a timeline version. So I had kids kind of think about kindergarten, 1st grade, 2nd grade, put a big timeline up, and gave everybody Post-its. And I had them kind of think back through the years to what their passions were, what their interests were over time. And then the next day, we also added books and games from those years, too, that stand out to us. So the timeline kind of grew over a couple days. I got to do this with the 7th grade class as well. So I'd get to do in the morning with the 7th grade a little differently than with the 11th grade at the end of the day. But very soon after doing this, I spoke to the principal and I said, I think that the students are getting a lot of support from our school, but I feel like they're hungering to give support and to become supporters of others. And not knowing the community well myself, because I'm new, he's like, oh, there's an elementary school 4 blocks away, and I'm sure that there'd be a teacher there who would love to have some 11th grade mentors.
Yes.
So we visited last week for the first time, and we broke up into 3 groups, and students created a cheer and created a little glyph to make some candy necklaces out of Fruit Loops. 1 yellow if you like to read adventure books, 2 yellow if you like to read science fiction, that kind of stuff. And my students were very, very nervous. One of the first things they said when I said we were going to be going every week and creating a relationship with these students, they were like, what if it snows? We can't go when it's meanwhile it's like 100 degrees here. Okay. So like, yeah, when it snows, you'll put some boots on and we'll walk over as well. But I think what stood out to me is, and then also why, for what's our grade going to be? What grade are we going to get? So right away, I just said, by showing up, you'll get the pass grade. You're going to pass. just by showing up. And also kind of why we're doing it is because you're being given a lot of support, and it's time for you to support as well. And then the last thing I said, and also we're just trying to make the world a more beautiful place. And it really wasn't until I said that they're like, yes, we're on board. Like, we're with you. That if that's what you're saying, that we want that, you know. And they were very nervous at the first meeting. The cheer group was like a little mousy group, you know, after having been so loud in my room. They were very nervous around the fourth graders. But by the end, everybody was in love. Everybody was in love. And I'm even more excited that we're going every weekend, that we're going to have this thread. And to talk about their own elementary schools and schools in Philadelphia. I can't wait to see what happens. It's a very little seed, but there are very huge issues with funding in Philadelphia for our schools. And I feel like there's going to be something else that comes of this, and I don't even know what it is.
But that's really exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a great way to start at a new place, you guys. It's a great way to start.
For sure.
So I wonder if there's anything that stands out to us from what we heard. They could be themes that relate back to some of the talk we had in the beginning about community. So if anybody could share out right now about something that stands out from what you heard. And again, to those of you listening to us, this is a good time for you also to share some of the things that stand out to you from what you've heard.
I think one of the things that really stood out for me was, Lisa Ann, when you were talking about bringing these other people into the classroom, I think that's really, I think that's a really good practice that I want to do more of in my class, because I think it helps remind students that they are part of the bigger world, that they're not isolated in this classroom and that everything else is going on outside of the walls. By bringing those people in and making kids a part of that, I think that's a really powerful thing. So that's one thing that really stood out for me.
Yes, I have found over the years of doing this more and more that the guest speakers are the drive that keeps us going, and it's so exciting. I mean, more, you know, I've had like 20 guest speakers a year,
Wow.
And people are so willing to come in. I don't pay anybody. I don't have any money, right? I Google. So when the kids come up with a topic, whatever it is, so like last year was meanness, or the year before it was special needs populations, whatever, I Google that. I hope I'm not sounding technologically ridiculous, but I Google that topic and the term guest speakers, and up comes, you know, hundreds of different people. And then I just, the kids will email, I will make phone calls. You can always get people who will agree. And I prepare, you know, I have long conversation with them prior to them coming in to prepare them. But the guest speakers really keep moving us forward. And when they come in, then there's more questions. And then we get new guest speakers, and then there's more questions. And almost always, it's where the project comes from. You know, like a woman came, a few years ago, a woman came from Paul's, which is a no-kill shelter. And she said something like, you know, we have a program where it would be great if you could actually take care of a kitten and then find the adoptive family. And we're like, take care of a kitten in the classroom? Sure, why not, right? And then we had a kitten in the classroom, and we adopted it out. We also adopted out 5 others, but we didn't have those in the classroom. But we found homes for 6 kittens that year. That was our big project. So, yeah, I mean, it's really great. Guest speakers are fabulous. And, of course, it connects us to the larger community, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I was thinking about the role of trust in all of this. So trust, Lisa, in your process, you know, that you have trust in the process and that you know it's going to lead to student passions and desires kind of coming up. And then Heather, seeing with you trust in student voice, trusting in the ability, or trusting that others will hear them and that they will feel some agency and that something's shifted but also trusting enough to give them the space for the speech, and to know that it's so much more than the speech as well. And then with the Flipboard, I think, Carla, too, just trusting that process, trusting that they're going to surface things that will keep them plugged in, literally, plugged in and reading. And so I was thinking a lot about that word trust, and that sometimes schools can be a really tough place for teachers to trust.
Yeah, that was my takeaway. At least something that I'm pulling from what everyone was contributing is that it's maybe to use your word trust is that trust in the process, right? Like none of these things or none of these outcomes were predicted. We couldn't say by the end of this will happen. I think that I think it's at the core of experiential learning is that it's an experience for us as well, and not just for them. And I think about, like, when I was hearing you talk, I was thinking about those students that will push back, and I always had at least 5 of them in every class. Why do we have to do this? Why do we have to learn this? And I think that if I can't answer why, then I probably shouldn't be teaching it. So instead of telling them why or saying it's for some future reason, right? Like college and career, and you're going to need this sometime in the future, but not right now. We're doing a big disservice to our students. But putting them in these moments and allowing them that time to take action and improving their own community is what transforms. Like, what was that? The listening spaces that you were talking about in your school? I love that idea, right? And it's not even just for students intentionally listening in parts of their building, but I mean, I need to be better at being more intentional in listening, and other adults around me. Oh gosh, so I think it kind of like clouds that line between teacher and student, and really helps to build that partnership and learning.
Oh, I like that imagery. Could you say that again? It clouds. Could you say that again, Heather, please?
I'll try. I don't know where it came from. I think I was trying to describe how experiential learning like this clouds the line between teacher and student and builds like a partnership in learning. Experiential learning, brings those two together because it's a learning experience for both groups, both people.
I think that is so important because I think that the relationship that you have with your kids and that you build in your classroom, you have to, it is about relationship, right? Communities are about relationships. It's about support and acceptance and consensus and all of those things, but you can't have that without the relationship, without that kind of blurred lines. And I think one of the things that we do as teachers that I love what you said about, if you can't answer the question, why do we have to do this, then I probably shouldn't be teaching it. But there's also those moments in my classroom where I don't know the answer. And I think it's really important to model that it's okay not to know the answer for our kids. It's okay to be wrong, because that's where the learning happens. And if we're so focused on getting through the content and, I have colleagues who have like their teacher persona and then their other persona. I can't do that. I don't know how to do that. I'm the same person at the grocery store as I am in my classroom. And I think that kids recognize and are drawn to that, that realness, that authenticity. And I think that, with being authentic, you have to be willing to be vulnerable and be wrong sometimes, and let your students call you on it, because that's the way real life works.
Yep, hear, hear.
I was
Christina, I think You're pinpointing trust is a good point. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, I guess, another question that I had for us, although we can stay right here if we want to, but is thinking about, I'm not going to bring us down. I was going to say we could think about challenges to the work, but I'm actually more thinking now that where I think it would be helpful to go is thinking about how we've supported other teachers to do this kind of work, or what are some supports that you've found? It could be organizations like Mikvah Challenge, but are there other sort of things out there for teachers who really want to go there and want to be more trusting? So how have you supported other teachers in this work, or what supports have you found for yourself?
I can start, because this has been this past year I shifted from teacher to teacher trainer or supporter, and I've learned a lot, and I don't have a lot of answers, but I can tell you that the questions that we ask along the way, like what happens along the way, is more important than the outcome. So and the need to reflect with your students. So I like that comment. I don't remember who, I think Carla, you were saying admitting when we're wrong or admitting when we don't know, and how important that is that in order for experiential learning or action civics or project-based learning, whatever you want to call it, to work, there has to be intermittent reflections where we're stopping to assess our goals or assess where we are and how it's going and what can we do differently and why did this not work. And I think most teachers I know that want to start out doing, youth voice civic engagement kind of projects like what we're talking about, their biggest concern is that the unknown outcome, right? And that it's, how do I make it fit in my curriculum? And I have to be done in 2 weeks. So how can I know it's over? And there's a whole lot of things. So I'll say this, that the reflection is key, and having those opportunities and systems built in your classroom to make sure that you're reflecting with students about the process, because that's where the real magic happens. And then start with issues that are in your school. I think if you have students who want to tackle homelessness, that's going to be a really tough place for you to start, as well as something with them. But choosing an issue within your school like meanness, right, is a good place to really identify and research the issue. Have the students survey other students, have students interview the principal or the dean or other teachers and learn more about the issue. Action research is another powerful best practice in this work. So I think there's a lot of organizations that I've come across that do a good job of outlining it. Obviously, Mikvah Challenge, I'm going to favor them. They're amazing. But organizations like on the East Coast, Generation Citizen, I think is the name of the org, and on California and on the West Coast, there's Sierra Constitutional Rights Foundation has curriculum called the Civic Action Project. So there's a lot of stuff online. If you go to a website called the National Action Civics Collaborative, I'll have to Google that really quick while someone else is talking. I'll share it again later. But it's a website where they have a bunch of links to a bunch of different orgs that often have their curriculum for free online for you to just get started. But for me, I think the greatest thing that we can do to support each other is to celebrate the work for each other. I think as teachers, we're it's almost like we're shamed into being modest, and it's not about me, it's about the kids. And well, you know what, like if you did that forever, I this is why I think a lot of times the turnover rate for teachers is far too high, is that we don't spend enough time celebrating each other's, like the risks we take and the extra mile and the work that we do, being on a webinar at 7 o'clock at night to help it, just to create discourse around this stuff. So if you see somebody doing something powerful, celebrate it for them, because most likely they're not going to do it for themselves.
Yeah, and I would say, we started with the word community, so I would say to try to reach out in any way you can. I mean, we're lucky in Philadelphia; we have so many teacher communities, teacher groups, and so I can't speak to anywhere else in the world, but I do know that you could start one, right? If there's not one there, you can say, this Saturday for brunch, come on over to my house, invite, 2 or 3 people, show up. You now have a community that you can bounce ideas off of. As I said, Google is really amazing. There's so much you can find on Google, right? So you just Google whatever you want. I would like a Maserati. See if that helps. I don't know, but it may not help with a Maserati, but it does help with finding people to connect with and support you in whatever it is you're doing. And nowadays, and I'm not really a technological person, but nowadays it doesn't have to be in your living room, right, or in your teacher's lounge. It could be online. And so I say to people often, just take that first step. Just reach out, even if it's a small step.
I agree with you, Lisa Ann, and I think that one of the most powerful things that I've done to to support other teachers is to invite them into my classroom, invite them in to see the chaos, because we live in this culture of fear kind of in schools, because at least in California it's like high stakes testing. You gotta there's all these rules that we're supposed to be following, and I'll never forget a math teacher came in and observed in my classroom, and I just invite them in and they become part of the community, and just like if they were coming into my living room, come visit. Check us out, it's a great place to be. But he left and he came back at the end of school and he said, Carla, I don't even know how you do that. How do you stand? Because kids in his class don't say a word all period long. And I'm like, I want it to be loud. I want it to be chaotic. It just means that something's happening, that there's, something's happening in the classroom. And so invite people in to see the chaos and witness your mistakes and see that you don't have all the answers, that it is all part of the process, and sometimes the process is messy, but so is our democracy messy. And if we're going to teach kids to be a part of it, then they've got to be living that. So invite them in, invite them to the community.
Right.
Amen. I want to take a second now, if it's okay, just to read a poem that I found that I thought might be a nice way to close. And it kind of speaks to everything that we just said. I hope that you can make connections to it. And then I'll offer just some closing thoughts, and then we will go gently into that dark night. Okay. This is called What We Need Is Here, and it's by Parker Palmer. I'm sorry, the poem is called The Wild Geese. But the line in the poem that struck me is What We Need Is Here. The Wild Geese. Horseback on Sunday morning, harvest over, we taste persimmon and wild grape, sharp, sweet of summer's end. In time's maze, over fall fields, we name names that went west from here, names that rest on graves. We open a persimmon seed to find the tree that stands in promise, pale in the seed's marrow. Geese appear high over us, pass, and the sky closes. Abandon, as in love or sleep, holds them to their way, clear in the ancient faith. What we need is here. And we pray not for new earth or heaven, but to be quiet in heart and in eye, clear. What we need is here. And actually, I took the poem from a column by Parker Palmer, but the poem is by Wendell Berry. So I already screwed that up like 5 times. But I thought the poem kind of speaks to a lot of things we talked about. We talked about time, and we also talked about not sort of the quiet of the poem that Wendell Berry talks about, quiet in heart and in eye. I think it's more Carla's kind of chaos in heart and in eye. But that what we need is here, that what we need is in community, and that the discovery of in the seed finding the tree, the discovery in the chevron of the geese, the discovery that happens in community is so vital. So again, that was The Wild Geese by Wendell Berry. But I want to thank all of you for hanging out tonight. I think this is the best educator innovator hangout ever of all time, and I think that that why that is so is because we really went really deep really quickly, and by starting out talking about community and by really becoming a community in this short amount of time, also just shows the power of teachers when we hear each other and when we listen to each other, and we can hope that our country follows our model. We are almost out of time. I want to thank all of you and all of our guests, and to thank everybody else for watching. I hope that you want to keep to date on future opportunities. Sign up for the monthly newsletter, please, at educatorinnovator.org. And follow Educator Innovator on Twitter at innovates_ed. And also don't forget to follow the hashtag #2NextPres and Twitter account for more on Letters to the Next President 2.0, and visit the website at letterstopresident.org. And before we go, maybe we can all say goodbye in the manner that our towns and cities say goodbye in. So how do y'all say goodbye out there in Northern California?
Oh, play Wairika Miners like you never played before. Bring glory to your high school as was done in days of yore. That's it, you guys. Thank you so much. It's been great.
Chicago, can we hear Chicago goodbye?
Peace.
Yes.
Yeah. Right.
Lisa, what do we say out here? What do we do out here, Lisa?
Be well. Change the world, people. Make it better for all. Be well.
We are family. I got all my sisters and me. Come on, so Wednesday night, y'all.
Awesome.
Tuesday night, whatever this is. Okay, so everybody.